And we are about to have liftoff in the fifth game of the 5 minute plus 1 second increment time control. There's Jan Nepomniachtchi, and here are the opening moves. We have knight f3 from Magnus in this game. So instead of our e4, e5s, and Petrovs turning into Frenches, we have an English.
Exactly, and here the move e3, an interesting move by Magnus. I wonder what exactly he has in mind in case Jan plays the move d5. Perhaps he wants to play something like knight to c3. So let's see what Jan will do here. You can also go for a setup with b6, and there we have the move d5, and now the move b3 by Magnus.
And he's just trying to fianchetto on this long diagonal, staring towards the black king. And in these positions, sometimes white is able to hand black an isolated pawn on the d file, but say we see d4, so we have the box, all these pawns staring at each other. So Benjamin, in this opening, do you like black, or do you typically like this from white?
I think black's doing pretty well here. C takes d4 is a nice move by Jan. He could take on c4, and after Magnus recaptures, play a move like a6 followed by b5 and bishop b7. And it's turning into a bit of a queen's gambit accepted, but I think black is a pretty reasonable version. The knight on c3 is often a little bit misplaced as it's blocking the bishop on the long diagonal, and very often you would rather have it on d2. So let's see what Jan is going to do. I think this approach with d takes c4 and a6 is very solid.
It's becoming sort of a queen's gambit accepted type of position, and the big part of these type of structures is that black has some weak squares, the c6 square in particular, and we see the light square bishops coming off and rook to a7 played. But I think white should take on b7, put a queen on f3, put a rook on c1 and d1, and that c6 square is tender and black needs to look out for it.
Exactly. I'm a little bit surprised by the move rook to e7 by Jan. I think he would have also addressed the issue with queen b6. That's what he does now. But had he played queen b6 on the last move, he could have already played knight b7 or knight c6, and he should be doing completely fine. Now Magnus might have a move or two to create some problems for Jan. But if he doesn't do anything quickly, I think Jan is going to be doing absolutely fine here with knight b7 coming on the next move.
A problem for white is that all of the pieces look like they're in pretty optimal squares. You need to look where to improve. The rook on f1, that's the one piece. But rook to e2, that looks a bit silly. So maybe queen e2, rook d1, something like that. It does feel, though, as you said, that black is in time. So knight to e2. He's opening the c file. It's about that c6 square, potentially. And what do you make of this?
Yeah, so we see a trade on f3. I think Magnus's idea was that in case Jan would have played knight d7, there would have been knight c6, and that is why Jan traded first. Now he goes knight c6, bringing his knight into the game. I think, Robert, you've highlighted this before. Magnus is going to try to apply pressure on that c6 square. He goes queen to c2, pressuring the knight, maybe a knight to d4 jump in the near future. So Jan still has a few problems to solve here.
Rook c8 would be a big blunder. Bishop d4 would be a winning tactic because the knight is pinned to the rook. So rook c8 would not be a good move, even though it looks like a normal one to protect that knight. Rook c7 is possible because bishop d4 after rook c7, you can actually take that piece because there are tactics on the e2 square. So you need to time these things correctly if you are both these players. But right now, Jan needs to avoid any sort of tactics that lose him some material. He walked right into it! Oh my gosh!
Robert, you cannot do this. If you're playing Magnus, you cannot make blunders like this.
Oh my god, we just spoke about it. The knight on c6 is pinned because of the back rank check, and Jan, he looks up at the ceiling, but there is no Beth Harmon solutions here. He is unfortunately going to lose this game. This is just clean material.
Yeah, he's down a very clean exchange, queen b1 by Magnus. Now he's just going to trade off some pieces. What a blunder by Jan Nepomniachtchi. He could have just played rook to c7, and then, like you said, there would have always been these tactics with taking on d4 and taking on d2. But now he's down in exchange. And Robert, I think we've talked about this before. If you want to have a chance against Magnus, you cannot blunder like this. And you cannot just throw games.
That was an even-looking position, and now he is just down. A rook for a bishop. There's an open file. If the position were a bit more closed, maybe we would say that black had chances. Of course, if he had a pawn and a bishop for the rook, then sure. But it's a clean exchange. Rook for bishop. There's an open c-file. Rook c1 here. Looks very promising. Benjamin, this should be a one-sided finish.
Yeah, knight e2. A nice move by Magnus. Now he's just going to move a rook to c1. Queen c2, trade of the queens. And you can already pretty much resign here if you're Jan Nepomniachtchi. A very unfortunate loss that seemed... I mean, there was a little bit of pressure by Magnus, but yeah, he just had to find a couple of accurate moves to solve all of it.
It was just a careless move there. He just wasn't looking for tactics. He was looking for positional pressure. And look at this move, Queen e4. Magnus, even when he is winning positions, he continues to be precise. That knight wanted to land on c3 to close down the c-file, maybe get a pass pawn. Now that knight is pinned. The queen on b7 has to stay put, tied down to the c8 square. And look at this maneuvering. You can trade on c3 if you want. He says no. Queen on a6 protects it all. e2 and a2. Beautiful, instructive play from Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah, great stuff here by Magnus. Jan goes pawn to g6. He still has that knight on c3. I guess now he's going to recapture with the pawn. Queen d3. I think if Magnus gets the opportunity, he's probably going to give his rook for the pawn. Rook c2. Magnus is winning here, but how do you actually convert this, Robert? There's still some work to be done.
And I wonder if Magnus has completely mapped this out, where he recognizes that certain endgames, if he takes on c3, and even if he's only up one pawn in the queen endgame, it's winning, because he just has that kind of knowledge. But here in this position, he might bring his king to help out in the center, queen to c4. That takes care of everything. b3 will be defended, and that c3 pawn, it's going to be surrounded.
Exactly, and now he can go queen to c4, king e2, and he should win this game pretty easily. So let's see what Jan is going to try to do here. Maybe king g7, moving the king up a little bit. There's nothing Black can do. Jan just has to sit and wait here and wait for Magnus to show him how, this game is won. Now I think rook takes c3 is a good way to make things a lot easier for white. And there we go.
Just two extra pawns over there on the queen side. This is one where if the white king could be checked a bunch of times, maybe you have a chance. But at this stage, king e2 might actually have some problems with the g2 pawn being targeted. So it's not as easy as it would initially appear, perhaps.
Yeah, still some work to be done for Magnus. He goes king e2. Okay, now I guess queen d5, like you pointed out for Jan. Hitting that pawn in g2, which is awkward to defend. You can go for the move f3. But then there's queen g5. I guess then there's king f1. So Magnus should be winning here in many different ways, even just a5. He goes f3. So I guess after queen g5 here, he is going to go for the move king f1.
Yeah, then you don't see too many more checks. I mean, even here, queen g3 check, so what? King to f1. The problem is that the black queen needs to be in 3 different locations at once. It needs to be on h1, but then also go back to g3 when the king goes to f2. You just can't get everything there. White's pawns go up the board. Magnus Carlsen is going to take his first lead in this match.
Exactly, b4. He's just pushing the pawns up slowly but surely. King g8, Jan just shuffling back and forth. There's nothing he can do. Perhaps just b5 here. Or queen d4, another nice move, offering the trade of queens, but also attacking this pawn on h4. And if you take the pawn on h4, Black never has any perpetual ideas anymore.
That's true. The king can slink away to the h2 square eventually, and you just block a check on the diagonal. So Magnus is up 3 pawns in a queen endgame, a few checks. That's about it. So Jan Nepomniachtchi resigned.